Going with backup quarterback Marcus Mariota for the second straight week, the path for victory for the Washington Commanders runs straight through the right side of their offensive line and into the hearts of the Atlanta Falcons' most glaring weakness. That and more right now on Locked On Commanders.
You are Locked On Commanders, your daily podcast on the Washington Commanders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
This is Locked On Commanders. I am David Harrison, your guy on the ground covering the Washington Commanders for WUSA 9 right here with you 5 days a week. And you can also find me writing about the Washington Commanders on Sports Illustrated's CommanderGameDay.com or follow me on X at DHarrison82. I want to thank you for making Locked On Commanders your first listen or your first view today. And to the everydayers, those who come through for every single episode, a special thank you goes out to you. And if it's your first time here, thanks for coming through, finding the show. Hope you like it. Hope you come back real soon. Coming up on today's episode, we're going to look at milestones within reach for the Washington Commanders, some bets that you should be looking at, and we're going to break down specific situational play calling that the Commanders should employ to take advantage of Atlanta's predictable tendencies. But first, we're going to detail the Commanders' keys to victory over the Atlanta Falcons. All of that coming up on today's episode of Locked On Commanders, a proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And we are going to start off with our keys to victory, even with a depleted Washington Commanders roster. The Commanders do have a clear and direct path to victory over the Atlanta Falcons, who have a weakness that aligns perfectly with a Washington Commanders strength here 3 weeks through the NFL season into week 4. And of course, those injuries and replacements are going to be incredibly important. Several key players not going to play in this game for the Washington Commanders. Quarterback Jayden Daniels with that sprained knee has been ruled out already. We heard from Dan Quinn on Friday afternoon. Wide receiver Terry McLaurin with a quad injury, tight end John Bates with a groin injury, and wide receiver Noah Brown with a groin and knee injury. All have been ruled out of this game heading into the weekend. This, of course, puts Marcus Mariota into the starting lineup for a second straight week. Outside of Marcus, you also got to look for guys like Luke McCaffrey. Obviously, Deebo Samuel is going to continue to try to be an impact player for this Commanders offense on top of Chris Moore, Jayden Lane, the rookie out of Virginia Tech. Those receivers are going to need to step up like they did to a certain extent last week, although Terry McLaurin was there for most of the game last week. At tight end, Ben Sinnett's going to get another opportunity to step up. No targets, no catches in week 3 against the Las Vegas Raiders, but a lot of key chip blocks on Max Crosby, a lot of physicality out of Ben. Very good overall game, even if it didn't show up in the stats. Colson Yankoff was also in on some important chip blocks, special teams contributor, so he's going to have to step up as well in place of John Bates. And I think that you're going to look at the practice squad for a call-up candidate this week for the wide receiver room, because if you go back to the initial active roster, only 5 receivers kept on the initial active roster in the first place. Then Noah Brown starts dealing with injuries again. Chris Moore eventually was added to the active roster. Now you're also missing Terry McLaurin. So right now, with Deebo Samuel, Jayden Lane, Luke McCaffrey, and Chris Moore, you've got 4 wide receivers on the active roster entering this weekend's matchup that are available for the game. So I think either Ja'Cory Brooks, the undrafted free agent, or Jacoby Jones, or Tay Martin, one of those 3 guys, I mean, at least one of those 3 guys, right, is going to get called up from the practice squad this weekend. My pick would be Ja'Cory Brooks. He's got more length. He doesn't have like burner speed, but I think he's got enough speed. And he made some really good plays in training camp to the point where I think I actually had him on my 53-man roster projection, get a little bit bold there with an undrafted free agent. So Ja'Cory Brooks potentially is going to make his debut. I was kind of joking a little bit with a member of the Washington Commanders staff on Friday and said, hey, look, Ja'Cory Brooks breakout game. And they responded to me, well, what does a Ja'Cory Brooks breakout game look like? And I said, well, for an undrafted free agent making his first NFL debut from a practice squad call-up, I think 3 catches, 40 yards. I think that's a breakout for an undrafted free agent, right? So, I mean, hey, look, if you get 3 catches, 40 yards for Ja'Cory Brooks, I think that things are looking pretty good. And that's not a firm prediction, but you never know, right? For the Atlanta Falcons, their top cornerback, A.J. Terrell, has been ruled out with a hamstring injury. That is a huge blow for the Atlanta Falcons secondary, who currently ranks number 1 against the pass in total yards per game. And it's not just because people are running on them. They're also 3rd best in yards per pass play in the NFL. So pass defense, one of the Atlanta Falcons calling cards. So how do the Washington Commanders win this game? Well, I think you got to dominate the early downs defensively. You got to get the Atlanta Falcons into some of these predictable, I should say, third down situations. The Atlanta Falcons early downs almost completely dependent on outside zone running, trying to set up the play action. The defensive front for Washington has to stuff that run attempt, has to keep Bijan Robinson from getting chunk yards and keep Atlanta in predictable third and long situations where they are throwing 95% of the time. You heard Dan Quinn talk about it. You heard Joe Witt talk about it. Stopping the run has to be the first thing. I talked to several players in the Commanders locker room, and they all essentially confirmed the same thing. One Commanders offensive lineman even telling me, look, when the run doesn't get going early, as the game goes on, it gets harder and harder to try to get it going because that momentum just kind of stacks again. And so for the Washington Commanders defense, do that to the Atlanta Falcons offense. Game management for Marcus Mariota. Again, another week. Don't need him to be Superman. Don't need him to be a Heisman Trophy winner. Just need him to be efficient, safe with the football, no 20-yard runs, ending with a fumble, things like that. Just protect the football, man, and play efficient. See the field, be a veteran, be decisive like he was against the Las Vegas Raiders. Use that scrambling ability when it makes sense. Use your arm when it makes sense. I think that they can do that. Combine that with Cliff Kingsbury calling a smart game, and things should be okay. And then exploit the run defense mismatch that the Washington Commanders are going to have here. The run defense for the Atlanta Falcons, extremely vulnerable here so far this season, especially on its left side, which is the offense's right side. They're surrendering 6.1 yards per carry against runs that attack their defensive left side, 5.3 yards per carry that follow the right guard. So left side interior, left side exterior on the outside, whatever it is. Both are very, very, very vulnerable. Outside zone scheme for the Commanders is very effective. They've enjoyed running that. Produced 201 rushing yards last week in total. Have to use that, establish that run early on against the Atlanta Falcons. But again, so far this season, the biggest gain or the biggest area to gain yardage has been on the offense's right side. So we'll see if they decide to exploit that early on, or if they want to test that left side, see what they can do behind, Laramie Tunsil and I suspect Chris Paul, the starting left guard. Key players versus player matchups from this assignment. Right tackle Josh Conerly Jr. for the Commanders against the Falcons left end rushers. It's going to be in a little bit of a different situation. Not that, Josh Conerly is playing against one guy every snap in every game anyway, but I think this Falcons defense is going to be a little bit more rotational on that left end spot than he has seen so far in his career. I think, again, if you're trying to exploit that weakness over there, Josh Conerly Jr. is going to be a big part of blocking up those right end runs. So that's number one. But you also look at the rotation of pass rushers that he might see in Atlanta. Leonard Floyd, the veteran defensive edge, Leonard Floyd, the veteran edge, has the most pass rushes from the left end against opposing right tackles with 21 so far through 3 weeks. Brandon Dorless, however, is their most productive with 1.5 sacks coming from the left end position. Linebacker Caden Ellis has generated the most pressure with 3 pressures attributed to him. And then, of course, Zach Harrison has also gotten a lot of left end work. So Josh Conerly Jr. is going to see a very wide mix of players on that position. He's got to be ready for every single one of them. I think that's going to be a big key. And the Commanders' defense, specifically defensive tackle Daron Payne against our Falcons' interior offensive line. Atlanta's most effective runs have come up the middle. They average 7.2 yards per carry there. Daron Payne has to win those matchups to disrupt those foundational run plays. However, the Falcons don't really run through the middle all that much either, so that number is definitely kind of skewed. But still, if the Falcons say, hey, look, what have we done well so far this season? Let's try to establish that early on. Then they're probably going to test it. Daron Payne, also Javon Kinlaw are going to be keys, obviously, in stopping that. And then in the pass rush, getting in Michael Penix Jr.'s face, forcing him to get rid of the ball before he's comfortable and set, leading hopefully to the first takeaway this season for the Washington Commanders defense. So those are our keys to victory. Now that we got those set, let's dive into the specific X's and O's of situational football coming up in week 4 for the Washington Commanders against the Atlanta Falcons. That's next on today's episode of Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode of Locked On Commanders brought to you in part by Square, your favorite neighborhood spots run on Square. There are certain businesses that truly make the neighborhood just feel like a home, whether it's your local sports bar, the coffee shop, or the corner deli, whatever it is. These are the places that help bring people together. You know, the local spot in your area that just comes alive on game days, where the energy is incredible and it feels like the whole community is just there cheering it on together. Spending money there doesn't just seem like a chore. It seems like you're supporting a true business. It supports the people behind it, the people that are working for it, and the community that benefits from its presence. Those local spots are what makes the neighborhood feel like a community, feel like home. And so many of them run on Square. Square is a proud partner of more than 4 million neighborhood businesses around the world. You can go to square.com/go/lockedonnfl to learn more. But before you do, go support your favorite neighborhood spot. You'll be happy you did. Square, see you in the neighborhood. Today's episode of Locked On Commanders also brought to you by DoorDash. It's almost the weekend. It's time to look back and crown this week's MVP on who delivered, powered by DoorDash. Just like you can win every Saturday with your DoorDash streaks, saving more every time you order. These players delivered when it mattered the most. For the Washington Commanders, Marcus Mariota truly delivered in week 3. After Jayden Daniels went down with an injury, couldn't play in that competition. The pressure was on, and Marcus Mariota came through with a poised veteran performance, counted for 2 touchdowns, ensuring that the offense didn't miss a beat. And if you've been watching week after week, defensive end Dorrance Armstrong is on a streak of his own, recording a sack in 3 straight games to start the season. Just like Mariota and Dorrance delivered for the Commanders, DoorDash delivers your Saturdays. With DoorDash streaks, you save every Saturday you order. Stack it up all season. You can save up to $250, including $100 in DoorDash credits. Order this Saturday. Keep the streak alive. Fuel your game day only with DoorDash. Terms apply. Promo period runs through November 18th. To win this game, Washington is going to have to lean on its foundational plays while strategically deploying some tendency breakers to punish an overall predictable Atlanta Falcons team. When the Washington Commanders have the ball in the open field, we're talking about the period or the stretch of field between the 20-yard lines, your own 20 to your opponent's 20. They've got a foundational play here, a play that they just kind of live on. They're very comfortable with it. They run it very, very well, and it has worked very well for them. And it just so happens that it runs right into an Atlanta Falcons weakness. I'm talking about wide zone right runs from 12 personnel. 12 personnel, 1 running back, 2 tight ends. Wide zone means you're going wide. It's a zone blocking scheme. Zone blocking means everybody that's blocking, you're blocking an area. If you come into my area as a defender, I'm blocking that area. I'm cleaning out my spot so that I can make sure my guy needs to get where he's going. It's a core concept that the Washington Commanders have run 28 times this season in my last count, and they've gone for 6.1 yards per carry against the Atlanta Falcons on their defensive left end so far this season. So it works for the Commanders. It works against the Atlanta Falcons. No reason not to go there, not to exploit that weakness. Success here opens up play actions for those deep shots over the middle, where Atlanta is weakest in its pass coverage, and allows 18.75 yards per attempt over the middle in those deep situations, in those play action situations. So again, it all just kind of bleeds to one another, and leads to potentially maybe a Ja'Cory Brooks 40-yard catch to get us our breakout Ja'Cory Brooks play of the game. On 3rd down, we want to see the Washington Commanders maybe go against the tendencies here just a little bit. 3rd and 5+, 3rd and long. The Washington Commanders, like pretty much every other team, likes to throw the ball. We talked about it already. The Atlanta Falcons are throwing on 95% of their 3rd and longs. Well, the Washington Commanders said, I see your 95%, and I raise you everything. 100% of the time this season, 3rd and 5+, the Washington Commanders have attempted a pass. It makes sense, but it is a tendency. It's a strong tendency. This is the week to break that tendency. And what a perfect place to do it than Atlanta. What a perfect quarterback to do it with. And Marcus Mariota, who's getting all kinds of disrespect out there in the ATL. Spread empty quarterback draw. You heard me right. Spread out the defense with the receivers. They're going to sit there and say 100% of the time in 3rd and long, Washington Commanders throw the ball. We're in pass coverage. Deep blockers come out there like you're pass blocking, then boom, hit them with a cleat in the dirt from Marcus Mariota, hit him with a forward punch from the offensive line, run that draw, get that 1st down. And let's see if we can break some tendencies as well as break the spirit of the Atlanta Falcons defense and the Atlanta Falcons home crowd. In the red zone, another foundational play, something that's worked very, very often for the Washington Commanders. Don't fix it if it ain't broke. Inside the 10-yard line, use that play action bootleg out of the I formation. It's a specialized concept that's been used successfully for, you guessed it, tight end Zach Ertz. They used it against the Green Bay Packers. It works. It preys on the defense, expecting a power run from a heavy formation, especially if you get that run going earlier. We just talked about that a little bit. Maybe a little stretch zone play action, come back, roll out, hit Zach Ertz, matched up on a linebacker or something like that. Get that throw out there and get Zach Ertz one of those touchdowns. I think it's going to be a very effective play. Usually we see this with Jayden Daniels. Haven't seen it a lot with Marcus Mariota. So in that sense, it could be considered a tendency breaker, but it is something that we know the Washington Commanders have. They've installed. They've used it quite a bit. When the Atlanta Falcons offense is on the team in the open field, again, between the 20s, I think the defense's priority has to be stopping Atlanta's foundational play, which is the outside zone run. We talked about that a lot. Every team runs it, obviously, but Bijan Robinson gives you every reason to run it if you're the Atlanta Falcons. One gap penetration from the interior defensive line is going to be important. What that one gap means is that the defensive lineman's job isn't to read the play so much, but it's to get into a gap. So if I'm one gap in the A gap, I'm firing off the line of scrimmage. I'm immediately getting control of that A gap, specific, right side, left side, whatever it is, because my job is to disrupt the blocking scheme before it even begins. Remember, those linemen are playing zone blocks, so they're trying to block an area, not necessarily trying to block a man. So if I can get into somebody's zone and disrupt that zone, it disrupts everything around it, and it gives my linebackers, if I don't make the play myself as interior lineman, it gives my edge rushers, it gives my linebackers, my second, third level defenders room to come in and just wreak havoc, and it prevents those dangerous cutback lanes, which, hate to bring them up, but if you see what the Eagles did with Saquon Barkley in the 3 matchups against the Washington Commanders, those cutback lanes can be incredibly dangerous. On Atlanta Falcons, third down plays, predictable again, 3rd and 5+, they're passing on 95% of their plays. The defense can use situational pressure. I want to see the cross dog fire zone blitz. We talked about it last week. Didn't see it a whole heck of a lot. We did see it a little bit, but we want to see the cross dog fire zone blitz. This concept, again, we haven't seen a lot, but I want to see Bobby Wagner and I want to see Frankie Louvu stepping up into the A gaps, one on the right, one on the left, confuse those blocking assignments. And then what they do is at the snap, they just cross, right? So whoever's on the left, he rushes from the left side to the right side A gap, which is between the center and the guard. Whoever's on the right, you rush to the left side A gap between the center and that guard, get penetration, get in there, help get Frankie Louvu loosened up just a little bit to help create some of the chaos out here in the red zone when the Falcons have the ball inside the Commanders 20, which I don't expect to happen too often, to be quite honest with you. It's compressed field, so use that red zone bracket coverage on top of guys like Kyle Pitts and Drake London. Make sure you got a guy below him. Make sure you got a guy over him. Force Michael Penix Jr. to throw a perfect ball, because right now, at least in his career, he's shown he's probably not going to do it. Use a linebacker to jam guys in the line of scrimmage. Use a safety to play over the top. Someone like Quan Martin, who was a captain for this game. Take away Michael Penix Jr.'s primary read. Force him to hold the ball against a very effective 4-man rush, simulated pressures. Maybe you do a cross dog fire zone blitz, all those types of things in that situation. Get to the young quarterback, put some pressure on him. Maybe he throws up a prayer, and one of your DBs comes down with it. Looking at you, Mikey Sanders. So I want to see Mikey come up with a big interception this week over in the middle. I feel like the Atlanta Falcons are going to try to do some dump offs to Saquon Barkley, to Bijan Robinson. Look for some Bijan Robinson middle screens. Look for some outlets. Bijan Robinson running over the short middle part of the field. Mikey Sanders, still, if you're in a zone, man, that's a prime area for you to jump one of those routes, get yourself an interception, and get things rolling for this Washington Commanders defense. Winning the schematic battle is one thing. Hitting milestones and making some cash for you while you're watching the game makes the victory even better. That's coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. This episode of Locked On Commanders is brought to you by Mazda. Mazda crafts cars for those who do more than simply move. Just like the coaches for the Commanders sweat every detail of the game plan, whether it's exploiting matchups on third down, creating red zone opportunities, whatever it is, Mazda brings that same intention and attention to detail to how they craft every model of their vehicle line. That intention delivers confidence with every ride, and Mazda has earned more IIHS Top Safety Pick Plus awards than anyone else as of this August. You can feel that commitment to detail and Japanese craftsmanship in every accent, from the metallic finishes to the available Napa leather upholstery. With standard all-wheel drive in every crossover SUV, you can drive with confidence through almost any season, knowing your vehicle is prepared for the conditions. You can make everyday drives feel like anything but, from smooth handling to intuitive controls. Like the players, they sweat every single detail, because when you make every move count, impossible becomes irrelevant. Mazda, move and be moved. Even with several key players sidelined, several Commanders are on the verge of climbing the franchise and league record books this Sunday in Atlanta. We got some milestones to talk about. Defensive end Dorrance Armstrong Jr. has been on a tear. He needs 1 sack to tie Preston Smith's franchise record of recording at least 1 sack in each of the team's first 4 games of the year. And Preston Smith just so happens to be on the team right now to witness it happen if it goes down in Atlanta. Defensive tackle Deron Payne is 1 sack away from passing Dave Butts and Montez Sweat for 8th place on the franchise's all-time sack list. And tight end Zach Ertz needs 13 receptions to become the 6th tight end in NFL history with 800 career receptions. A little bit rich, 13 receptions, but look, Zach Ertz could do it. The wheat in the middle of that defense is not great, so certainly could see Zach Ertz get there. So you might want to start him in your fantasy football leagues, but my must start for fantasy football this week is Marcus Mariota. His dual threat ability, which he obviously has still, showed against the Raiders last year, gives him a really high fantasy floor, 40 yards rushing, 1 touchdown last week. A lot of RPOs, a lot more RPOs than I expected. You might remember I expected a little bit fewer RPOs, but they still use RPOs pretty consistently. Design some rollouts, maybe use a draw on a 3rd and long. Surprise the Falcons defense. Red zone efficiency for the Washington Commanders right now is at 75%. That's super high, so a really great bet for Marcus Mariota to find the end zone himself or at least get a passing touchdown here in this game. And just to prove that I put my money where my mouth is, Marcus Mariota is my starting quarterback in my fantasy lineup in my money league this weekend because my starting fantasy quarterback is Jayden Daniels, and he is not playing. Commanders versus Falcons wagers using FanDuel lines, of course. We got low risk, medium risk, high risk, and extreme risk, depending on how risky you want to be. Low risk Commanders plus 2.5 points. That means if the Washington Commanders win or lose by no less than 2.5 points, you win. If you take this line, minus 110 odds, you bet $100, you'll get $110 if they win. The defensive front for Washington matches up perfectly against Atlanta, completely dependent on establishing its ground game, so they can stop that hopefully very soon. Even with a backup quarterback, the Washington Commanders should be able to control the line of scrimmage, which is the most important part of this whole thing. And even if it's a 1-score game, they'll probably be on the winning end of it. Medium risk bet, Ja'Cory Crosky-Merritt, running back, anytime touchdown. The odd there, plus 165. The offense for the Washington Commanders, I think, is going to try to establish the run very early on. Ja'Cory Crosky-Merritt, certainly, I don't know if we have a lead dog in the running back group, but certainly one of the guys is going to get worked in there. Did have a knee injury he's been dealing with all week, was a full-time participant or a full participant in practice on Friday, so not too worried about it, but if he's out the soreness, if the Washington Commanders get up on the Falcons early, you might see them maybe rest the rookie a little bit. So a little bit of a risk there. High risk, same game parlay. I love my same game parlays. Washington Commanders take the points in this one. Also stack it with Zach Ertz getting 40 or more receiving yards. Ja'Cory Crosky-Merritt getting 40 or more rushing yards. The overall odds for this one, I looked at it, plus 382. And right now, this parlay basically just loops up everything in our game plan and puts it all in one line for you or for me, because I'm going to bet it. So if you want to join me on that, you can. Extreme risk, Zach Ertz to score 2 or more touchdowns, plus 2,200 odds. I think that if they extend some drives, get into the red zone, Zach Ertz certainly could be on the receiving end of 2 red zone touchdowns in this game. That's going to do it for today's episode. Next time on Locked On Commanders, we will be reacting to everything that happens in the Week 4 matchup between the Washington Commanders and the Atlanta Falcons. In the meantime, if you've got questions or comments, you can send them to me directly by becoming a Locked On Commanders insider at joinsubtext.com/LockedOnCommanders. For your next listen, get a double dose of Locked On NFL. Find out what the national media thinks about Washington's chances, and then get the full league-wide breakdown after all of the Sunday action. Find Locked On NFL on YouTube or wherever you're listening to this podcast. To the Everydayers, I see you. I appreciate you every single day, and I send you a special thank you for coming through yet again today. Until next time, stay safe, be kind to one another. We'll talk again real soon right here on Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.